And so, we can obviously install one if needed, but we propose that we do not. The perimeter security fence will be a minimum 6 foot tall chain link fence per the National Electrical Code. No utilities required at the site. Again, since it's not manned day to day, we don't need water, we don't need sewer lines. And then, again, pollinator-friendly seed mixes will be used on 50% of the site. You go to the next one. So this is the location. The orange line is the 71-acre parcel line. The blue line is the outline of the entire area that we'll need for our project, and that includes any stormwater ponds that we might need, the perimeter fencing, the access road, and things like that. So that's the parcel 71 acres. The project size is 30 acres. And the actual array area where panels will sit is 13 acres. So, really kind of utilizing a small part of this overall parcel, and we're putting it as, in an area that is, we feel like, best suited within the parcel itself. It will generate 3 megawatts, and again, this goes into the community scale solar projects. 3 megawatts is big enough to go on the 3-phase power line, produce enough energy, but it still stays under that threshold of not needing, for Georgia Power to do any real significant utility upgrades or anything like that. As far as setbacks, we're 300 feet from the southern parcel boundary, 525 feet from the nearest residence, 825 feet from Ben Hill Road, and 940 feet from Rocky Bottom Road. So again, really shoving the project kind of in this northern boundary. And our interconnection is at Ben Hill Road, where our site access is. You can go to the next slide. So this is the site plan. You can see our access coming off of Ben Hill Road. The blue area, that is our solar array area, so that's where the actual solar panels are. The transformers and electrical equipment is strategically located kind of in the center of the site, and that's those 2 black boxes that are dead center in the middle of the site. And that's that's strategically done for many purposes, but for the purpose of the community and the county, is that those are really where any sound is produced. So by putting them in the center of the site, if you're at the perimeter fence line, you're typically not going to hear anything. It's a slight buzz. They're about 60 decibels. So it's kind of talking room, probably about as loud as I'm talking right now, but it's a constant hum. But so the perimeter of the fence, you're not going to hear it. At the perimeter of the parcel, you're definitely not going to hear it. So that's why those are, one of the reasons why they're located there. Another reason is for electrical wires, it's typically the shortest length as well. Yeah, we got our perimeter security fence showing that's just around the array area. It's a 20-foot offset from the panels themselves, because it allows any access around the perimeter of the site if needed for any emergency purposes. That's plenty of room for trucks to get around. Yeah, so that's the site plan. You can go to the next one. These are just pictures of some typical arrays that we have, and these are the same single axis tracker system. So you can see these are slightly tilted. That is actually facing west, so it's kind of later in the day. This is a site up in Murray County, Georgia. And this is actually the same size. It's about a 3 megawatt project as well. So you can see that they sit, at flat, they sit about 4 feet to 6 feet off the ground, and when they tilt, they can be a maximum height of 9 feet. At nighttime, they're sitting dead flat. They go back to flat, so they're sitting about 4 to 6 feet off the ground. Go to the next one. And this is just another picture, kind of at full tilt, that you can see. So this is actually in Columbia County, Georgia. It's right outside of Augusta, and this is early in the morning, so they're facing far due east, getting all that light. Go to the next one. I do want to just address some of the common concerns of solar projects. We've been to a lot of different communities and installed projects, and always like to address these just to let everybody know that, hey, we pay attention to this, and there are aspects that we do in our design and siting that to prevent these issues. You can go to the next one. So glare, with the single axis tracker system that we're using, it tracks the sun, and this is something that really helps prevent this glare issue, but ultimately we're trying to capture as much sun as we can. So these panels are designed to capture as much as they can. They don't want any reflective light. So the industry is getting better and better at that. So glare is just really not an issue because that's lost for us. But there are studies into it of how much glare does come off of like a fixed tilt system, and they compare it to glare off of a newly paved asphalt road. So it's not something that's blinding, and it changes. Obviously, the sun rotates throughout the day, so it's not sitting in one spot. But again, we're using proposing to use these tracker systems, which reduces that risk considerably. And another point is that they install these on airports, which is glare is obviously a huge issue. So they've obviously seen no adverse effects to that. You can go to the next one. This just kind of shows how it tracks. As you can see in the morning, it's going to face due east, and then it's slowly going to rotate throughout the day and follow the sun. And again, that just maximizes our production. You go to the next one. Noise and light pollution. I kind of touched on this earlier, but for community solar projects, noise is typically you can't hear it outside the project area, and specifically when you're designing these transformers to be in the center of the site, which are our loudest aspect. So we strategically do that, and we really, it's actually in the ordinance too that transformers need to be at least 200 foot from the property line. We obviously adhere to that, so that's not really a concern of ours. Light pollution is another one. Again, typically we do not need lights out there. It is in the ordinance that light is required, and we would propose that we do not do that, but we will do it if needed, and if it do need it, we'll make sure that it's arranged in a way that it's shining straight down and not shining up or out to adjacent properties. Go to the next one. Property value impacts. There's been numbers of studies on this because this is kind of the biggest concern when you're, again, the siting aspect of a solar array is that you can't just put these out in the middle of nowhere. So you've got to typically be near a load demand. So when you are typically going to be near some residential or commercial structures. So there's been a lot of property value impact studies. University of Texas has completed one in 2018 that evaluated over 950 solar sites. It's a very in-depth study that was done. They basically found that there was no significant impact of adjacent property values. We ourselves commissioned a property value impact study in Illinois back in 2019. We were doing a lot of work up there because we wanted to understand, is there an impact? Is this something that, just get extra data from the University of Texas study? So we hired a company to do that. They looked at sites specifically in Illinois, Indiana, and Colorado, but that study came to the exact same conclusion that there was no significant impact, and it was essentially negligible. And the reason for a lot of this is that with the right site selection, you can't hear these things, you can't really see them. There's a number of reasons into that, but that's kind of the main aspect is that they're passive, quiet neighbors. Go to the next one. The last one is increase in stormwater runoff and flooding. This is a concern that some of the older designs of solar used to use a lot of gravel on their sites. Well, that's not the way we design these anymore. We're, again, using pollinators that create long root systems or native vegetation, and you know, especially for this site where it's currently used kind of as farm grazing, we don't see any increases. We're designing to that. We're engineering for this. So we're looking at what's existing conditions and what our proposed conditions are, and making sure that if we need to install any stormwater ponds or any sediment traps or anything to that extent, that we will have that in the permanent design, and it'll be a permanent structure out there for this property, because we're not proposing to do any grading. You know, it'll most likely just be perimeter silt fence during construction, and really good vegetation. Go to the next. I think that might be it. Yep, so that's it. Thank you for sitting through that. I know it's a long time of hearing me talk, but glad to answer any questions about solar in general, or, you know, obviously our project.
Are there any questions?
I have a couple of questions, if I
Yes.
could, please. If you indicated that the power distribution existing is Georgia Power,
Mm-hmm.
can you do this also on EMC line of private?
Yes, I mean, we can tie into any existing three-phase power lines. This project specifically, and you know, what we're kind of answering to right now is Georgia Power's essentially RFP to get projects onto their grid.
What is the voltage on that existing distribution?
Do you know, Tony?
So what was the question?
The voltage on the existing?
It's 13.2 kilovolts.
Okay. That's a three-phase, four-wire system, I assume.
Yeah.
How will you synchronize turning your switch on into an existing up-running system?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we coordinate a lot of coordination with Georgia Power. So we essentially, and they actually handle that. So what we do is we bring our poles up to their system, and then they have a pole or two that their system is basically tying off of, and then they connect the wires. So the whole energization process is handled with Georgia Power. They're standing, you know, right by our side when we're doing that to make sure everything, and we actually do a test before we connect into it to make sure we're producing what we said we were going to produce, and it's coming at, you know, the voltage and everything that we need it to come to, and then we connect those wires. So there's a lot of checks and balances. That process is one of the slower parts, where it takes about 3 to 4 weeks before we make that final connection.
How long do you think it will be before you attach that connection to that line?
From today?
Yeah.
Assuming we start construction in September, it's typically about 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you my telephone number.
Okay.
I want you to call me when you throw the switch.
Okay.
I'd
Absolutely.
like to see that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's not as exciting as you would think, but I will 100%. Yeah, it'll be neat to see the project. Yeah, absolutely.
If it goes wrong, it'll be exciting.
Say again.
If it goes wrong, it'll be exciting.
Bring
If
us
it goes
out.
right, it won't be exciting at all.
Bring
I
a
want
sandwich.
to be far away if you think there's any question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'll give you my telephone.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
I don't.
All right. All right, there was nobody else for the public hearing, so can I get a motion? Huh?
Does Alicia have any questions?
Oh, Alicia, you have any questions? I'm sorry.
No, I don't.
I figured if, well, I didn't even know you were still there. My bad. All right, she doesn't have any questions. All right, so can I get a motion to,
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
all right,
Second.
all right. All right, the public hearing is closed. So I guess we need to hear the staff report.
You got it?
I got it. Okay, the special sections, 2101 Rocky Bottom Road, agricultural and residential ground-mounted solar energy system farm. Okay. So Upson County, Georgia, S1 LLC has requested approval from Upson County for a special exception for a ground-mounted solar energy systems form on 71 acres at Rocky Bottom Road. In the ordinance, the AR zoning district lists the ground-mounted solar energy systems as a permitted use which may be approved by special exceptions. The following principles are permitted for the special exceptions in the AR district: small, intermediate, and large ground-mounted solar farm systems. Ground-mounted solar energy systems. This is a picture of the 30 out of the 31 acres. You'll be using 30 acres for the ground-mounted solar energy systems. Just an aerial view of the property. Okay, right here we have another aerial photo of approximately 13 of the 30 acres comprising of the solar energy electrical equipment and security fences. An additional 17 acres will be used as shade buffers, property buffers, site access, erosion and sediment control measures, and construction laydown areas. Okay, and right here we have some more aerial photos so you can get a better view of the property. And here's the last aerial photo. You see Thompson on the bottom and Highway 19. Any questions?
Do you have a recommendation?
The recommendation?
Approval or disapproval?
Approval.
You recommend approval.
Approval.
All right, are there any questions for staff? Alicia, you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I do have a question, and it's just for my own personal edification. Now, I know we established buffers, but it appears, from my understanding of what we said for buffers, originally footprint 71 acres, but you're only going to use 13. Is there room for expansion of this?
So that's more dictated by what's on the utility grid.
Right.
There, technically, is there room for expansion if there's more capacity on the grid?
Right.
Yes, but we're really confined by what's on the grid itself. And again, we try to use the best piece of the property, topography-wise and wetlands-wise and things
Yeah.
like that.
Well, I'm just curious, what's going to become of the rest of the property? The other 71 minus 13, is it, is there going to be hay cut off of it, or, it's grazing cattle?
Yeah, so that's up to the property owner. So we are leasing this area. So the remainder of the parcel, we're leasing our specific area that we're using for our energy system. So the remainder of the project or parcel can be used by the property owner for whatever he wants, as long as he doesn't plant 70-foot tall trees right next to it.
Right. Right.
Structure your view.
Exactly.
And I guess that's some lease agreement. You're
Correct.
leasing this property, you're not buying it, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So it's a long-term lease. Okay, and I'm certain that'll be worked out in the lease. What he or she can and can't do with the property, whatever, with the remainder of the property. Okay. All right, I'd hate for that ground to necessarily go fallow, and not be used for anything other than bee pollination.
Yeah, we have, a lot of our projects where there's ample room around it, they farm right up to the fence line.
Okay.
We have no issue with cattle grazing or anything like that, as long as goats aren't jumping the fence line.
Okay, and so the security fence will be around the project itself?
Correct,
Not
so essentially
necessarily
a
around
20-foot
the-
offset from the panel itself, so we really confine it to that specific area.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
I think that's a question. Is Gaines Wilson still on that property?
So the property is owned by Rolling Ranch LLC. So they own that parcel and the two parcels just north of it as well.
Okay. Thank you.
And he's using it to graze cattle right now. So he's moving cattle from pasture to pasture. And one of the design requirements by the landowner was that we make sure that it's still accessible to those other fields, other pastures. And so we designed around that so they can move. And we expect they're going to be grazing right up to the fences. And one other thing I wanted to correct, I looked it up, that the actual voltage is 12 kV, not 13.2.
Okay.
Just to correct the record.
But we're only concerned with 13 acres roughly.
But
Your project.
for the array itself, so we do need, the 30 acres is.
Yes, I understand
Yeah.
that, but I mean, yes.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
In the staff report recommendations, are these conditions that you have here?
I would say yes, sir.
What are you looking at, Johnny?
Number 8,
Staff
page
recommendations.
5.
Okay.
Staff recommendations, they're related to the limited conditions. That does not be brought out to the public.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you have an extra copy of that.
I'm good with accepting it with the recommendations.
Okay. All right, now entertain a motion.
I'll make a second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you all.
All right, we will see you at the Board of Commissioners meeting. Keenan probably has told you the date. And now they do limit your presentation to 5 minutes maximum.
We did say a lot, so removal.
We can talk faster.
All right. So at this point, we'll go back to old business. And discuss the Gateway Corridor and the tiny homes ordinance.
That may be it.
Yeah, I had it spread out everywhere, so you probably got mine too.
Was there something going on there, Doug, during the?
There was
Did we
concern
go
about,
offline or something?
there was concern about volume with the YouTube channel, but the staff that I talked to, they checked and they thought they heard everything fine, so.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, so we didn't go offline. That's good. Okay, so we'll go back to old business. The first item is back to the Gateway Corridor. Where are we at on that, Doug? That has gone to the commissioners?
Not technically.
No,
Well,
what we did is,
as a working document.
right, we requested input from the, let's see, we'll get through here. What we did is we requested input from the commissioners. What I received, I did get one comment from one of the board. He wanted to basically say, hey, are we in the right direction? Are we in the wrong direction? I did hear from one of the Board of Commission members who said that their concern was that if you're all familiar with the Shreno's fence, the concern was that maybe the language in the screening wall buffering there towards the end of your draft ordinance isn't strong enough, isn't detailed enough to maybe eliminate that sort of thing. So maybe you want to look at that language, but otherwise there weren't any other comments from the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
But,
I'm
yeah,
trying
that's
to-
where you were, is you were basically asking for their input. And, you know, we can go to any section if you want to start beefing it up, changing it, adding to it. If you're ready to go to public hearing with this particular draft, you can do that.
My recommendation is if we, you know, if that's all we have from them, we take it to public hearing and see what the public's got to say. You know, I mean, we've hashed this thing out long enough.
I second that.
Yeah, we've hashed this thing out long enough. It needs to go to public hearing. If there's anybody else in the public that's got some input that we should deal with and address, then we move forward, because this
Yeah.
is, we've nursed this enough.
Well, what, can you share with us which commissioner, expressed?
Commissioner Ellington?
Okay. I thought
But
it
you
might
see
have-
here,
I
this
thought
is-
it might have been him. I mean,
Here's
that's
the
in this-
section he's talking about, standards for screening materials, walls, fences. It's just the 4 lines there.
Right. Well, the last time I went by there, speaking of Sereno's, or the old Sereno, I don't know what it is now. It's where Sereno's used to be, a restaurant. At least the fence was all one color. So, you know, that's improvement in some respects, although it's still at varying heights. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we can look at that language.
Well, I think the only sentence, and I think this was what you added at your last meeting, if you look at the bottom of G, towards the back, you say, screening material shall be plant material and/or be a commercial grade manufactured material intended for screening purposes.
Yeah.
Now, whether you feel that's adequate or not, I guess that's your call. That's the closest language I think you've got that might address his concern.
Again, I think we've hashed it long enough. We need to take it to public hearing. If they've got anything that, I mean, we've toyed and played with this.
Yeah. Alicia, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we're to the point. I think we're ready for a public hearing.
Okay.
At least get some other input, hopefully into it. But I think also from the standpoint of the screening materials, the walls, fences, plant materials, maybe we do need to go and look at how, thinking of it from a perspective of enforcement.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about enforcement as well ad nauseum.
Right.
And, you know, you really have to have the resources to enforce any language, whatever it is, and the will. Oftentimes, you know, you have to have the will to enforce the language, in my view. So I understand where you're coming from. So what do I need to do? Do I need to take a motion for a public hearing?
Yes.
We move this to a public hearing?
Yeah.
Or do I
That's
have
what-
a motion?
Johnny
That's
made
what
a
I've done. I've
motion.
made a motion. We take this to
All
public
right.
hearing.
Do we have a second?
And I second it.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second that we move this to a public hearing. When would that public hearing be?
Your next meeting, we can advertise for your next meeting.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, it's unanimous.
Very good.
Okay, all right, so that moves that along, at least some. The next item is the tiny home ordinance. And if I'm correct here, Doug has graciously drafted
Well, this is your old draft. The only.
the old draft.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is, you really haven't made many changes. When I went back through it, and as a matter of fact, the one change I thought you had made, there was some maybe disagreement or lack of memory of that, so I think, and that you'll see,
Yeah.
here, I'll put this at the end. I think one thing that we had agreed, and this you'll see reflected here, is deletion of the standards. That the state of Georgia will have tiny home standards, and that those can be followed through the state of Georgia ICC. So we had discussed deleting these construction standards that were going to be in our own ordinance, and we'll just go with whatever the state of Georgia, and we can put language in that deals with that. I think the thing that the other major change I think that we discussed, and here you see it referenced in my number 1, is I think that there was discussion that maybe these would be permitted in manufactured home parks. And I think there was general consensus that, yeah, that's probably okay. But then maybe not everybody, I think there's some discussion about, well, was that right? So I think you can have discussion about, the one section here is definitely, you're gonna have a tiny home subdivision, or whatever word we want to use, that's still in here.
Okay.
But if we want to allow them other places, we'll have to address that. And the only other thing I came up with is that, this was drafted with the term economy efficient as opposed to tiny. Is that okay, or would you rather just go with the tiny home terminology?
Simple. I'm always for simple. There's less argument when it's simple. There's my feelings on that. My thing was, I looked over this and read it. We did discuss the possibility of putting it into the mobile home parks if they had it in there. They're sectioned, not integrated with. But if we allowed it into a mobile home park, this would be mobile home, but then this section then there'd be a separate section that would be tiny homes or economy efficient dwellings would be separate. I don't see that that's a problem if we did that. Long as we, you cannot integrate, you cannot mix them, but if you have the land space and you're going to follow the rest of the requirements that we've set forth, that you could put them into a section, of a mobile home park.
Or commingle it. I mean, I don't have a problem with commingling,
Well,
to be frankly honest, because people that live in mobile home parks are looking for, it's just a different kind of efficiency. Instead of a stick-built house, they have a mobile home.
yeah, there's just an aesthetics, and you're going to get maybe a little bit different crowd with a tiny home than you are with a mobile home,
Yeah.
and especially since we're going to require permanent foundations instead of on wheels. And, but my question with that now, mobile home parks are zone PR, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If we allowed tiny homes in a section of a mobile home park, this reads that their principal permits in AR districts.
We would have to amend the PR to allow.
If we're going, would we have it'd be the simplest thing to amend PR to allow a section for tiny homes instead of requiring the hassle of rezoning. That could create a whole big can of worms if we just said, okay, we amended this document that we could allow tiny homes in PR with these restrictions and requirements. Wouldn't that make best sense?
Yeah, and this goes, Mr. Chair, this goes back to discussions we have in some other ordinances where we talk about by right and by special exception in particular. And I think this is a discussion you need to have, and I'm not suggesting special exception is something you need, but, is it by right, and what language do you want by right into the PR, into the AR? Make sure that the standards that you want to see are in there, and you don't worry about special exceptions. And really, there's no housing by special exception off the top of my head. Everything's got its zoning district, and that's where it goes. Even your RVs are by right into the locations where you allowed them, and the Board of Commissioners adopted that ordinance.
We're just going to create ourselves more hassle if we do by special exception. If we do by right and conditioned, then we settle it, instead of having to readdress it every time something comes up. We create the document and the situation as it is, and by right, and we don't have to deal with each little intricate thing or every time somebody comes up with something else. If we set the base right to start with.
I just think you need to have that discussion, and the discussion that you had there, can you intermingle it, or does it have to be segregated in the manufactured or the PR zoning? That's a good discussion for y'all to have, and you'll work out whatever into the language. I mean, certainly the next draft of this, I think now we're going to start rolling on tiny homes, and I think you can see that it certainly won't take as long as the corridor has.
Right.
I think that we can work on this
I
fairly
think
quickly.
this is very close to what we could, right now, we're not too far away from what we could put out there right now with what this is. Because we're going with state requirements for the tiny home itself.
Construction.
So we're not recreating the wheel there. So all we're doing is basically defining where we're gonna allow them and what we're gonna allow. Not the construction of the beast, just what we're gonna allow. If we're gonna allow it in
Well,
AR, PR, then let's.
he brings up a good point about, establishing it maybe in the PR zones. I want to sort of go back and comment on the commingling, and I'm not opposed to commingling. And one of the reasons is perhaps maybe the owner of the mobile home park may want to start to convert it over to tiny homes. And tiny homes would be a more permanent and, in some respects, in my view, a better community than, say, a mobile home park. So I just give them that opportunity to do that and not put too many restrictions on them. Folks will live where they want to live. And we just need to sort of notch out where it's permissible and what's permissible in each one of those zones. We only have 1 or 2 mobile home parks in the county or in the community. So I would advocate again that, in addition to a separate subdivision, as described in, this language, that perhaps the only other place that they might be permitted would be in a mobile home park. Simply because it's efficient living, and that's sort of the design, that's like the impetus, so to speak, of a mobile home park is some efficiency.
Well, you certainly have time to, another meeting or two to debate that issue. If you're of two minds and decide what the language is going to have.
What say you, Madam Chair? You're making noise.
So, my question is, are we looking at a tiny home community, not part of the mobile home park? Are we looking at that as a by right? Is that what we're discussing?
Yeah, I guess it would be by right, but it would have to be a planned subdivision. So it would come before this board with a plan, and then, that this commission still has an opportunity to impact on, to have its say over the tiny home project, one way or the other. Either we approve it or we don't approve it. But it would have to be done as a subdivision as opposed to just ad hoc, willy-nilly, anywhere you want to put it.
Right. Okay.
I got one other comment on the park. The park must have, this is on section 17, this is Article 5:17. Says the park must have a minimum of 5 economy efficiency dwellings. I'm okay with having a minimum, but would we, if they present us with a plan, okay, it's like building a subdivision, I'm gonna have this many sites, but we're gonna require them to build five houses to start with, or they're gonna build one when somebody buys it, then they build a second one, then they build a third one. But their initial plan would have to be a minimum of 5, but they don't have to have all 5 to start with. It's just a language thing, I think, that we need to look at there.
You can clarify that.
That we just clarify that language. And I've got one more question on, this is on.
So wait a minute. Let me go back up and see what I think you're saying. You're saying you wouldn't require them to have 5 initially?
Yeah. Yeah, they could, their plan would,
To have a plan, 5
They got a plan for a
plan.
minimum of 5, because that's what the code's gonna require. But we're not gonna require them to build 5 just out of pocket and to as spec houses, so to speak. But they build one, it sells, they build the next one, they build the next one until they reach their 5. I'm not gonna if I was still building, I'm not gonna spec house 5 houses, until I sell one,
Nobody in Upson County's gonna do that.
Yeah,
It's gonna have to come outside the county for somebody to do it. And I don't think anybody's gonna come here to build 5 tiny houses.
well, I mean, I could do it, but I ain't going to.
Not at one shot.
Yeah,
We
I
don't
mean, I
have the
just think,
clientele.
I
We
think
don't
it's
have-
going.
We don't, where's the clientele gonna come from?
I don't know, but let me tell you, they're building 5 houses on my road all at one time.
Yeah, but it's not in Upson County contract. Who's the contract on the job?
It's an outsider.
With what?
It's one of these.
That's what I'm saying. And when he moved into town, he brought everything that he needed to do that way. He brought an electrical contractor, plumbing contractor, he brought all his contractors with him, so it doesn't amount to anything when you start to talk about what we do if you're in construction.
Okay,
That's just
well,
what, somebody's got to have a big enough set to go ahead and start something set locally. My other question is on the next page, on page 4. It's section 0, number 3. There must be a minimum of 35 square foot floor area. Is that, Doug, is that meaning that there's just open floor space? Is what that means? Because we're, in tiny homes, we're talking from 400, maximum of 400, minimum of 220. But then that language says, there must be a minimum of 35 square foot floor area. Is that just gonna be open floor space that there are?
Remember, this is the section we've already agreed to delete.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, let the ICC and let the
I'm
state of
with,
Georgia.
hey, you're right.
Determine our building
That's
standards.
right. Yeah, I'm back. I back off. I just,
okay.
all right.
All right, so what's our next move?
Well, what I can do is, I've certainly heard, there was mention of this coming back in a subdivision plan that you'd review. I don't recall that being in this ordinance. Do you see that somewhere that I'm missing, or is that something you want incorporated into it?
Does every subdivision have to come?
Well, no, if it meets the standards of a minor subdivision, it's administratively reviewed by me.
Okay, then it doesn't have to come back to us. If it meets those standards, I don't think we need to have to, we don't have to deal with that.
What's a minor subdivision, 5 or 6?
Well, it's a subdivision period if you're dividing a piece of property into 3 or more properties.
3
It
more?
doesn't matter the size, it's just 3 or more, you now are a subdivision.
Okay.
Now, if
that's
you don't,
That's
but
the
it could be
way-
100 lots, but if you've got if all your road frontage is there, in theory, if you don't need new water lines, new sewer lines, that major infrastructure is not required, it still is an administrative review because they have to meet those standards. And if they meet the standards, as you know, for instance, the last one, Cahaba Shoals, and even the one across the street, they wanted to deviate from the standards. There's nothing in the ordinance that allows me to grant administrative variances, so they had to come to you. They pretty much met all the other requirements, but they wanted to vary for some of them, so that had to come to you, and that's...
As long as it meets the standard, it doesn't have to come back to us. I mean, that's just.
Or if it's a major subdivision where, yes, we're putting in new roads, we're putting in new
Infrastructure.
water lines, you're
Yeah.
putting in infrastructure.
Yeah. Apples and oranges.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, anybody interested in building a tiny home project is probably gonna it's gonna be a planned community as opposed to just
To some degree.
a subdivision. I'm trying to think it through.
Well, right now,
Somebody interested in throwing one of these together is not going to do it in an ad hoc kind of way. I think it's by intention that it's a small community.
well, and the design is remember, we borrowed from your RV, the design of an RV park. So we basically took that language out. So that will be the design of the minimum lot size, the setbacks, cars, whatever else was borrowed from that. So
Right.
if there's some standard of the park itself that you're not happy with, please revisit that. And when we bring revisions to you at your next meeting, that's something that, now that we're putting the corridor at least temporarily behind us, you can spend some more time looking at this ordinance and see if it's got the bells and whistles that you want it to have,
Okay.
without worrying about construction.
Yeah.
I think there are other places that can be taken care of better than,
Okay. Which section is that you say we are going to take out?
let's see.
Go ahead and mark that.
There it is,
It's actually.
dwelling design standards, you'll see.
What page? Direct me to a page.
4.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's one of the couple of
Okay.
things you actually did agree to in your earlier discussions.
Yeah.
I see, okay. Okay,
All right, which item do we leave, what we're talking about now? Which item on the list?
well, I think we're talking about the whole list, are we not? What,
You're talking about eliminate that section.
That section.
Yeah.
Session.
Anything deals with
Because
construction
it's one-
standards.
One through 9 on that.
Yeah, we're not gonna change nothing, Joel. We're not gonna touch it.
Okay, good.
okay, so,
But yes, we'll come up with language that integrates this into the manufactured home parks, and we'll talk about the PR zoning to whatever minimal degree. Basically, this will be an amendment to the PR zone, just like the other part is an amendment to the AR zone.
Yeah. Makes sense.
okay, is there anything else we need to do with that? Other than just continue
Only if there's
to
something that, you
well,
know,
maybe if we table it for now, we just continue to review it,
You're just gonna make it.
read through this, study it, and then be able to talk intelligently about it at the August meeting.
yeah, we can bring it back to the next meeting. We've got 2 new cases, applications, but again, this side don't think it has as many moving parts as other ordinances you work on, so.
All right, you all right with that, Madam Chair?
Yes, I'm good with that.
Okay. All right, in that event, let's move on to the next item agenda, which is other business. I think the Cahaba Shoals subdivision, maybe we have some restrictive covenants.
A part of them anyway.
Yeah.
You'll recall, Mr. Vice Chair, that at the meeting where you approved the subdivision, the only thing that you really wanted to look at again or brought back, you had some concerns about the RV ordinance language in the restrictive covenants. So you'll see, I did not give you all of the covenants. You only asked about the RV portion. So that's letter O there. And there was actually a little bit of back and forth between Mr. Chastain and I, and Chase Fallon, I'm sorry. And so this is the language that, sort of discussing it, Mr. Fallon and I came up with, and I think it pretty much reflects what you had asked for at the time. It basically says that we'll tell them they need to follow the county ordinance, and we can be more restrictive, but we can't be less restrictive.
Looks good to me.
Okay. All right, let me just, do you have that in front of you, Alicia?
I don't.
All right, well, let me read it to you. All right, it's Cahaba Shoals Restrictive Covenants, Item O. The Code of Upson County Regulations regarding recreational vehicles shall be complied with, except in those cases where these restrictive covenants or the rules of Cahaba Shoals Community Association, LLC, are more restrictive. I don't know what that means exactly, but okay. The more restrictive standard must be met. Any recreational vehicle located on any of said tracts for a period exceeding 30 days shall be kept within a permanent enclosed structure, period. Any RV remaining on a tract for more than 30 days must have an environmental health department approved septic system. You have any thoughts on that, or? I think Johnny said he was
No,
fine with it.
I think that's the direction we were going in, is
Yeah.
to at least have a minimum of county standards.
Yeah, I think the whole point was just to make Mr. Fallon aware that there was an ordinance out there that perhaps he need to take a look at it, and it appears he has. So I think we're good. So, all right. Is there anything else?
No
Anything else
action
we
on
need to
that's
do?
necessary. You just wanted to review what the language was going to be and
There it is.
Okay. We're still good with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you good with it, Mr. Joel?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so moving on. The next item is planning commissioners' issues or announcements. Anybody got anything?
I don't.
Nobody going on vacation? Everybody gonna be here next month? What about you, Madam Chair?
Surgery goes well.
You have anything
Sorry,
for,
no, I don't have anything else.
Your
As far as I know,
minions?
I'll be there next month.
okay. All right, the next item then is secretary issues and announcements. Turn the floor over to you, Doug.
Thanks, sir. Well, this will be a tag team on this one. The first one's mine, and Keenan will address the second one. On the broadband comprehensive plan amendments, the draft or the proposed changes were approved by the Board of Commissioners. They adopted their resolution, and so we are good with those language changes. However, you'll recall we have a joint plan. So we also have to get the two cities, municipalities, to adopt the same thing. Ms. Kyle Fletcher, the IDA, is working very closely with me on talking to the cities. She's actually probably taken the lead on this a little bit and encouraging them to get their resolutions drafted and adopted, and hopefully we will not see any change in the proposed language changes. And then once we have, it was suggested to me by the regional commission staff that they really don't want to receive this piecemeal. They don't want to get the county's resolution and then a one city resolution, and then they want it all as a package. So while the county has gone as far as we can itself, the Board of Commissioners has done what they need to do, we still need to get the cities going on this. So we'll certainly give you the update when the cities are done with that. We're encouraging them to get on their agenda as soon as possible. Hopefully there's no issue with the language. It was language suggested by the regional commission staff. I adjusted a little bit for Upson County, but otherwise it was pretty much what the regional commission staff suggested would be good amendment language. So hopefully the cities will see it the same way, and as soon as possible get that done. Then we will advance all that information to the regional commission staff requesting broadband ready community status, and that part of it will be done.
And then, what does that mean exactly?
That means that in the future, if some entity of the county, along with a private sector party, want to apply for funds, that can get you up to 8 additional points on the application if you have that status approved by the state.
So you're broadband ready.
You're broadband ready, and that'll get you 8 points on a funding application.
Okay. Okay. I'll bite my tongue. And enjoy my 12 megabytes per second. All right.
So we have the Windshield Tour. The Windshield Tour was basically led by the consultants of Wood, Brian Ray, and Lee Walton. The Windshield Tour was actually Wednesday the 23rd, 2021, basically invitation only. So the Windshield Tour basically was designed to address specific zoning issues covered by the moratorium. The tour consisted of a route around Upson County businesses, and during the Windshield Tour we issued issues popped up such as the appearance of businesses, the relationship between persons who own the business and them that hold permits and licenses relevant to the operation of the business. So after we wrapped the tour up, we had a conversation about the zoning issues, and the consultants will be coming up with an ordinance to kind of establish some kind of ground of the zoning issues in the county.
Okay, an ordinance to do what now?
Basically zoning issues, like for instance, the appearance of the business has to be
I see. Okay.
clean cut, maybe, just have certain stipulations for certain businesses or zone areas.
I see.
And the chair was on the tour, so if Alicia, if you've got any comments in addition to what Keenan's told us.
Yeah, I think we looked at a lot of different, whether it was a convenience stores, storage units. We looked at a lot of different places, trying to give them a good picture of what we have today and how to make that a little more uniform, if you will. Give them some guidance to the overall, not necessarily the design, but the appearance.
Okay. Okay. All right, was there anything else? All right. Well, in that event, I think we've covered everything. I will entertain a motion.
Well, one more thing, Mr. Bridges, your day's completion's coming up,
It's
right?
coming up soon, yes, sir.
When is it?
July 30th.
July 30th. So you won't be back to another meeting.
We won't be back to another meeting.
Well, if I don't see them, well, I want to thank you for what you've done.
Yes, sir.
And
Thank you so much.
wherever your journey takes you, we wish you well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And I want to echo what he said. I didn't know you were a two-digit midget, so to speak, and getting short in the saddle. So I am pleased to have met you and pleased to have seen you work, and I hope that it's been a good
Yes, sir.
experience for you. It seems to have been a good experience for us. So,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
all right, anybody else? All right, I will entertain a motion.
No, I was just gonna say thank you again for all you've done helping us.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that.
Make a motion.
All right. Second. All right. All in favor of adjournment? All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Good job, Sam.
Yeah. I'm getting
Here, get you another cookie.
I need a cookie. I may take this whole thing home.